following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Throneberry Fields forever. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the man himself is here, Jeff Kallman. How are you, sir?
I am so far so good.
Oh, you have the dulcet tones of a George Case Jr. How about that?
Well, thank you very much.
George Case the third, actually. And Bert Sugar too. In my mind, whenever you talk, it's Bert Sugar. How you been?
Oh, I've been good. It's been a very pleasant week. I have had no complaints. Spring has arrived very comfortably in Las Vegas. My only regret is that it won't stick around like this after the end of May.
My question is, what do you like about Vegas, and what do you dislike about living in Vegas?
I like the general climate. I like the people. I like the music scene, and I like the various other activities, even away from the casinos, though I do enjoy playing slots now and then. The thing I probably don't like the most, because I don't have ready access to the beach anymore, is the heat of the summer.
That's what you don't like?
Well, I mean, I've always been a summer person, but when you're baking at between 115 and 120 degrees, it's kind of tough to enjoy.
Right. You can't wait
and
for
when
the
you
beach
live as far away from
to
the
get
beach
there
now,
to drive you somewhere where it isn't 115 degrees. I understand.
And the only time I get to see the beach is when I go out to Southern California to visit my son.
Ah. You're very proud of your son. Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, my son's name is Brian, and I think we talked about this on an earlier show. He loved playing Challenger Little League baseball when he was growing up, and he became involved in Special Olympics softball, and his team represented Southern California in the National Special Olympics last summer, and they won the silver medal.
Beautiful.
And to put the icing on that cake, the first time he stood up at the plate and swung a bat in a National Special Olympics, he hit a two-run homer.
Wow. You know what? I don't remember how I responded to that when you told me in an earlier show, but
I think it was two more wows.
You had a cavell.
It was amazing for him, and it was amazing for me.
Nice.
Watching how far he'd come.
Hey, let's talk a little ball. I can't wait to do this on a weekly basis. And what do you want to talk about?
Well, for one thing, everybody who was looking forward to a big bidding war for baseball's best player after the 2020 season, sorry to disappoint you, but Mike Trout has extended with the Angels to make him an Angel for life. It's
How
going
sweet
to pay
is that
about,
for baseball and for Trout and for the Angels? All three.
This is great. This is great for Trout. This is great for the Angels. It's great for their fans. Now all the Angels have to do is continue building a team that he can be proud of.
True. Exactly.
And they may be getting a little bit closer. They've rejuvenated the farm system over the last couple of years. That was a major concern around the Angels in Trout's earlier seasons, was that the farm had been so parched thanks to a number of other deals that drained it quite a bit. But now the farm for the Angels seems to be coming back. So I think within a year or two, we may start seeing the beginning of a team that baseball's best player can be proud of.
And as far as the fans are concerned, the Angels are obviously rebuilding, but it's nice when they're either or, let's put it that way, competitive or interesting.
Well, they have the advantage that they can rebuild on the fly. They don't have to tear it down to rebuild it, because Artie Moreno has money to burn, and he's not afraid to spend it. Now, he has made some spending mistakes since becoming the owner of the team, but the fact that he's not afraid to spend is a big plus, not just for the Major League roster, but for that revamping of the farm system. So the Angels have
and
he's
done
resources.
some things. He picked up the catcher of the A's last year. I can't think of his name. They got him on the cheap. He's on the upside of 30, on the wrong side of 30, but he handles pitchers extraordinarily well. And in keeping with being interesting, they signed or acquired Matt Harvey, the former Met. And
they got him in a deal with the Reds.
Okay, what was that deal?
Actually, no. I believe Harvey was a free agent.
Okay, I thought so.
But I think,
he did play for the Reds last year. He was traded by the Mets.
He was traded in, I believe it was June, and he showed some good things while he was with the Reds, even though he's making himself into a far different pitcher than he was when he first came up before the injuries began hitting him. But they're willing to take the chance that the Harvey who's begun remaking himself in Cincinnati can continue and produce with the Angels. I haven't heard anything bad coming out of their spring training camp about Harvey. I don't see any big causes for alarm. And that's going to be critical because the Angels pitching staff has been so injury-prone.
Has been his head. And he is now, I've heard some interviews with him, he is now humble. And he's much more willing to be a team player and not the prince that he made himself out to be with the Mets. And
he did have some help in making himself out to be that prince, because he was so gifted when he came up to the Mets, and everybody saw him as the next best thing to a franchise savior. And it's not every player who can avoid letting that get into his head. Then you go through some of what Harvey went through.
But it isn't every player that does let that get into his head. If you got it, you don't have to flaunt it. And I could think of the Bob Gibsons, the Sandy Koufaxes, these guys, even Drysdale, all those guys were pretty humble. And Harvey just didn't fit the role. Maybe it's New York. A lot of players can't play or pitch in New York.
He could and did when he was healthy. I think two things turned around for Harvey. One was when he got hit with the injury bug, including the thoracic outlet syndrome that he had to deal with. And the second one was a couple of incidents off the field, I think really brought him to his knees, finally. Put those two together, and you've got a pitcher who's remaking himself, which is what he started doing in Cincinnati. Getting out of New York for him was probably a huge favor, even if neither he nor anybody else thought so at the time. So We're going to see a different Matt Harvey this year. And he may end up making himself into at least as good a pitcher as he was before the injuries. He'll just be doing it a lot differently. He's not going to blow anybody away, but he doesn't have to.
Right. Exactly.
And the strangest thing is, and I'll go to my grave saying this, the moment that marked him once and for all on the mound, people try to find something wrong with that, but when he wanted to go back out for the ninth inning in Game 5 of the 2015 World Series, that spoke well of him. It wasn't his fault that he didn't understand how gassed he was or that his manager didn't. And it wasn't his fault that the game got away from the Mets.
Right. Well,
but he wanted to go out and finish what he started when he had the chance, and that spoke pretty well of him. And still does.
Two ways of looking at that: to know your own body and be able to communicate with your manager. And Terry Collins, he just that's something.
Terry Collins made the same mistake. Terry Collins made the same
years.
mistake with Harvey that night that Grady Little made with Pedro Martinez in Game 7 of the 2003 American League Championship Series.
Yes.
He measured his man's heart, but didn't measure his gas tank.
Yes, that's very well put, by the way.
Oh, well, I said that about Martinez,
and
I thought the same thing about Harvey that night. But again, it wasn't Harvey who let the game get away. Harvey came out of the game before the wheels came off, and an easy throw home for a double play that got thrown wild turned that game around. Put it into extra innings in the first place. That double play would have ended the game and sent the series back to Kansas City.
Yes, I remember that.
And if I remember correctly, I think it would have been Jacob deGrom starting a Game 6 if it had gotten there.
Whoa. Speaking of whom, they haven't yet extended, and spring training is about done.
deGrom has said that he doesn't want to talk about that during the season.
Right.
Unless the Mets come up with an offer he doesn't want to refuse. And I know there's a little restlessness among some of the Mets about that because actually Noah Syndergaard has talked up about it. He said that deGrom deserves whatever he's worth, and keeping him happy so when it comes time for him to reach free agency, keep him on their side pitching for the Mets. Direct quote, I just think they should quit all this fuss and pay the man already. I don't blame Syndergaard for feeling that way at all, and I think he's right about that. deGrom is still young enough to have some good miles left on him, and now's the time to do right by him if you want to keep him a Met.
Oh, certainly young enough to have good miles on him.
Yeah, so is Chris Sale, who just got the extension with the Red Sox. That deal was done over the weekend.
That was a biggie. That shows that there's a new trend in management knowing the worth of their homegrown players.
Or at least the players that they bring aboard, either in deals or as free agents originally, and these players are valuable to them, especially if they want to keep winning the way the Red Sox obviously do, and the Mets want to start winning again. So getting Sale for 5 years and $145 million, that's just smart. And Sale is still young enough to still have some years. As a matter of fact, there was a projection made on him when the deal came forth that through his age 35 season, when that new deal expires, he may still be worth just a shade or a hair shy of an average annual 5 wins above a replacement level player over the whole life of the deal. So in one way, they got Sale on a bargain, but they're still showing him the money.
Right.
And now with Mike Trout off the post 2020 market, I suspect that all eyes are going to be falling upon Mookie Betts. Betts becomes a free agent that same winter, and right now he's the best player on the Red Sox. And he has said that what he wants to know what his real value is. And between now and the end of the 2020 season, don't be terribly shocked if the Red Sox start rolling the tumblers and figuring out what he's really worth and showing him some money before he hits the open market. He said he wants to test it, but if the Red Sox make him the right deal, he'll do the Mike Trout thing.
Right.
And sign on for the long haul. The Astros have done that. They actually started doing that last year when they extended Jose Altuve. Now they've just extended Alex Bregman and Justin Verlander. And Verlander is an interesting case. You don't often see pitchers his age recovering from a few seasons that made it look like he was starting to hit his decline phase, and then since he became an Astro, looking as close as possible to his vintage self, even if he's a slightly different pitcher now. He's not trying to throw hard. Oddly enough, he got the same velocity on his fastball without trying to do it. Plus, he throws his slider a little bit faster than he used to do it. He's a different pitcher now.
Yeah.
But,
pitching is like a tennis serve, and I played a little tennis, and that's absolutely right. When you're just trying to go through the ball, and you'll develop a rhythm that way that will, instead of trying to hit it as hard as you can, is what I'm saying.
The key word you just said was rhythm. I noticed Verlander's rhythm since he's become an Astro, and compared to his rhythm in Detroit, his rhythm, his physical pitching rhythm as an Astro has been a lot smoother and a lot more complete than it was when he was a Tiger. So Verlander, he's just gotten 2 years extension, and he may still get a couple of more at the end of this one.
Right, and the team is a lot safer. The team doesn't have to reach out into Never Land in paying the guy.
Well, the Astros had, if you count him, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve, they've locked down 3 of their anchors. George Springer, I believe, I'd have to look quickly, but George Springer maybe is probably somebody else that the Astros have on their extension radar. I'd be shocked if they didn't because of how valuable he is to them. But Springer...
Hey, Jeff, you mentioned the Boston outfielder by the name of Mookie Betts. They also have an outfielder by the name of Jackie Bradley Jr.
He's not as good as Mookie Betts. He's good, but he's not Mookie Betts. And everybody thought it was the other. Everybody thought it would be the other way around when these 2 guys came out.
Yeah.
Everybody thought Bradley was going to be the big gun.
Does Bradley still have a chance to be one hell of a ball player?
He does. He showed just enough in the postseason last year to show that he can be good. The consistency hasn't been there, but when it does come, he's going to be a top of the line ball player. I believe that.
Yeah.
And he's still young.
You gotta like
young enough to make that happen.
You got to like his enthusiasm for the game, and
this guy when he comes to the plate or hits the field, it's almost like he has party streamers trailing him.
Yes, he reminds me of Willie in that way.
Is the same way. These 2 guys look like they're having a blast out there.
And they light up the field, and it reminds me of watching Willie Mays in his early days when he loved it, and he wasn't embittered by life and the way he was treated, both in San Francisco and in baseball. These 2 guys easily put you in mind of that. So does George Springer.
He has a great enthusiasm. Mike Trout does. Springer, by the way, becomes a free agent for the first time after the 2021 season, and if he continues playing at the level he's playing now, even though he'll be like 30, 31 then, the Astros are going to be looking to lock him down too. They're not going to want him to get away. Not if they want to stay competitive at the level they are right now. And right now, the American League West still goes through them. Right now.
Right now, exactly. And I think it will for the next few years. The A's can only get so good before they take those players that they developed and trade them off and start again.
Normally that depends on how they tend to finish at the end of the year. The A's could be a sleeper this year. There are a bunch of no names. If you don't count Matt Chapman, the A's are a bunch of no names. But we have thought in the recent seasons that they were coming into a season with beat up pitching, and they've surprised people. I wouldn't put it past them to surprise people
names.
Again.
They have a DH who's hit over 40 home runs like 3 years in a row.
Chris Davis.
Chris Davis. They
Chris
have
Davis
a first
and Matt
baseman
Chapman, the
just,
third baseman. Those are the two names on that team.
And there's two more. There's a guy named Laureano in center field, who is a sleeper, and this guy
he'll become a name this year. I would
right?
not be surprised if Laureano becomes a name this year.
And how about that first baseman who just got hurt in Seattle, or in Japan, playing Seattle, Hamid Bone. His wrist is hurt. Can't think of his name. Long, I think his name is, or
that was a blow. That was a blow for them. Billy Beane
that was a blow for him, and their pitching
punching his
is
buttons very quickly.
Horrible pitching. Starting pitching. They were beat up last year. Beane put it together with
Band-Aids,
mailing tape and chewing gum, whatever he used. He brought in Austin Jackson, Cahill, a bunch of guys that made them incredibly competitive. I don't think he can do that again with the pitching.
Well,
and
remember, every time we've ever written the A's off as they've got to retool for a couple of years, don't expect anything. Every time we've said that about them in the last decade, they've surprised. So who knows?
Not every time. It's like I say, they've from Cespedes on Holiday, they've disappointed their fans time and time again by getting to the precipice of really being a long-term playoff contender, and they had to start all over again.
Well, I'll be able to get a good look at what's on their farm because their AAA affiliate is now here in Las Vegas. I think I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. The Mets changed their affiliation to Syracuse AAA, and the A's took on the Las Vegas affiliation. So I'll be getting a good look.
And if they don't get a ballpark, it wouldn't surprise me, and they've had a lot of trouble finalizing this, if they wouldn't take the Oakland Raider way and see ya. Go to Vegas, go back to Montreal, not back to Montreal, but go to Montreal, go to North Carolina, is looking for an affiliate. And you know what? The powers that be in Oakland, in city government, city and county of Alameda County, they can't get together themselves, and the A's have a hard time negotiating with these people. All sports franchises have a hard time negotiating with Oakland. And,
which is kind of a shame because I've seen the designs for the proposed Howard Terminal ballpark, and if it goes, it looks like it'll be a great ballpark.
It'll be a gem, and it'll face the other ballpark across the bay, which is a gem, and it would be beautiful. But here's the problem. The land is co-owned by a bunch of folks, and the area around it would be built up just as the area around AT&T Park.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, the Howard Terminal plot has a railroad running right past it.
Right, but I don't know the exact it's not far from Jack London Square, and they'll be able to get people in, and they'll build up around. The city doesn't realize that you put a ballpark in, it rejuvenates the entire area. Like in San Francisco, all that area was industrial, around 5th and King and what have you. Now it is built up with bars and restaurants and souvenir shops and more restaurants and more souvenir shops. So
I hope they can get I hope they can get the idea resolved, because everything I've looked at regarding the design and the plan for that new ballpark is going to be a gift for the A's.
It would be nice. It would be nice for the long-suffering A's fan who has had to go to an antiquated dump that was made into a football field from a decent baseball field. They had a nice view out of center field of North Berkeley and all that, and green grass growing like they do in Kansas City out there. Davis comes back with his Raiders and builds this horrible monstrosity of a wall that it killed A's baseball, and yet they have a fan base that is steady and loyal, and small though, but they are, they are something else in terms of the support they give for what they've been given. And I'm just thinking if Giambi's brother had slud, things would have turned around a lot for back when they played the Yankees. So there are things that are meant to be. I still see Jeter flipping that ball. Wow, in my mind's eye. The Yankees were great all our lives. Will you agree?
If you don't count 1966 through 1975.
That's true, but they were interesting in those years. See, great or interesting. They had Fritz Peterson, for instance. Fritz Peterson had the lowest ERA.
Lowest home ERA of any Yankee pitcher, including Whitey Ford.
In history.
Mm-hmm.
In history. And I interviewed both he and Marty Appel, who is the public relations guy, and they were on the same podcast with me, and Marty was the guy and they recounted the story, who went up to Fritz. Fritz didn't know from records and stuff like that, and Marty goes up to Fritz and he says, I want to tell you a mind blower. Guess who has the lowest ERA of any pitcher in Yankee Stadium? He goes, who? You. That was pretty cool. So, yes, it was the Horace Clarke years that you refer to, and they were pathetic. But better than Steinbrenner, and so they had an owner with a heart, Mike Burke from CBS, and
whatever Mike Burke had, he needed a little less heart and a little more brains. Mike Burke knew about as much about running a baseball team as the Yankees knew about running CBS.
And George Steinbrenner knew as much about human relations and not making people crazy.
That's very true. But he also knew where to find baseball people with brains.
I know, and he didn't listen to him. And the only time the Yankees won,
if you gave Gabe Paul to Mike Burke, Burke would have been stuck for an answer.
Okay, my point is that the Yankees didn't win with George Steinbrenner. They didn't win twice. Twice he was suspended, and those were the years he won. It was supposed to be a lifetime suspension, once for illegal campaign contributions.
What happened was with the Steinbrenner suspensions was Steinbrenner was down for the count in 1974-75. In the interim, they signed Catfish Hunter, and they already have a couple of live ones in the system, including Thurman Munson. Steinbrenner was able to come back from the suspension to begin running the Yankees again, and for 1976, I think, is when his suspension was over, and they won the pennant. 90s, Steinbrenner gets suspended over the Howard Spira Dave Winfield affair,
right.
And while he's gone, Gene Michael is able to rebuild the farm again. And when Steinbrenner returned, the Yankees began winning again.
But not by Steinbrenner.
But it was while he was gone that Gene Michael and the farm people were able to retool and rebuild.
Exactly.
And they did it fast. And they did it faster than
throw in Al Rosen was in that mix for a while. Speaking of Vegas, he came out of Vegas, by the way.
Back in the 70s, he was.
Yes.
Hey,
I love talking ball with you.
Yeah.
Tell me your overall view. We're about to start another season, and tell me something that you're impressed by and something that you're unimpressed by. Start with the unimpressed.
Well, I'm distinctly unimpressed so far with a lot of the proposed rule changes, even if some of the other rule change proposals look like they have some potential. I'm not in favor, really, after I keep thinking about it, of the 3-batter minimum for a relief pitcher. Because suppose the guy comes in and he gets murdered right out of the chute. You're going to make him face 3 more hitters and maybe find yourself in a 5-run hole. That's just not right.
Okay. What are you impressed
On the other
by?
hand, I am surrendering. I surrendered in an essay I wrote. I think it was back in early February or late January. Let the National League have the designated hitter, because it may be fun every couple of years, every 4 or 5 years, to see a pitcher hit a couple of them out, but it's not fun wasting a lineup spot when that lineup spot with pitchers barely doesn't even reach the Mendoza line.
Okay.
Time to wake up, folks. Pitchers hitting is not fun.
But you're conceding that the strategy of National League Baseball,
I'm not conceding anything strategically, because the pitchers are coming out of the game after 5, 6 innings, and when the managers are taking them out, they're often as not putting somebody else in the number 9 hole just so the pitcher doesn't have to come up again. Spot doesn't have to come up again for a couple of innings.
Right.
It's not a diminution of strategy. It doesn't diminish strategy, but it shifts it around. And that's the way I see the DH happening if the National League takes the DH. It's just all it's going to do is shift the pieces. It's not going to eliminate them.
Okay.
Plus, there is something I noticed in the last couple of years, that there quite a few American League teams were not putting designated hitter types in that slot. They're actually putting leadoff types in the number 9 hole and basically giving yourself an extra leadoff hitter, and that's not a terrible thing.
Okay.
And National League teams, when they play interleague games, some of them are doing the same thing, putting a leadoff type hitter in that number 9 slot. And the first time I saw that being done, I thought that's a pretty interesting idea, and it works as often as it doesn't. So why not? If you can get yourself an extra leadoff type coming around when the order changes over, you may give yourself a little bit of an upper hand.
Gotcha.
But as for what I am impressed by, most of all, and I say this at the beginning of every season, I am most impressed by the fact that if there is one law in baseball that you can never overcome, it's Berra's law. It ain't over until it's over.
Beautiful. Yogi Berra.
Which is why you will never hear me make hard predictions about who is going to win the World Series any year. Because until it's over, you don't know.
Okay. Will you agree with me that our Mets are pretty solid?
I think they're a lot more solid than they look. Bertie Van Winningen.
What do you mean by that?
Interesting. I still see where people are, on the one hand, conceding the National League East is going to be a dogfight, but they're not necessarily thinking in unison that the Mets are going to be in the higher thick of it, but I think the Mets will surprise some people this year. Van Winningen did a better job retooling the team than people thought, even with the moves that he made.
Cano is a better
was
player than I
terrific.
thought. I've been watching him in the spring. He is spry, and this guy is a hitter. He sprays the ball, and he's a hitter. And I want to say one other thing about the Mets. My only prediction is that if Alonso is all of that, and he looks to be, they are really going to be a solid team. They're going to be that.
Alonso is one of the keys, especially because I don't think that Dominic Smith is going to be quite as effective in the major leagues as he looked to be when he was in the highest minors. I saw him play in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, and the guy looked like everything that was advertised, but in the majors he hadn't quite come up to full strength. He could theoretically be a trade chip for them come July because Alonso is that good.
Hey, and you're that good. You're a terrific podcaster, my friend, and I'm honored to have you on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We'll do it again, same time, same bat station. How about that?
Yes, we will.
All right. You have a healthy and doesn't even have to be wealthy as long as it's healthy, but have a great...
I'm afraid it's not going to be wealthy with my...
Well, don't be afraid.
I work so hard.
I'll get you... If you need anybody to call to tell you what it's going to be like not being wealthy, you could always call me, and I'll walk you through it. It's easier than you think.
I promise you, I didn't need to call you to know how being not wealthy was going to
okay.
be. I work hard for what I don't make.
Right, and just remember this, though. Big money problems. Think of it that way.
That's very true. And, on which note, I will sign off by saying, let's play ball.
All right, and I'll sign off by saying, thank you, Jeff Kallman. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Throneberry Fields Forever. This is an iconic one. You'll find out why. Adios. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.